The Federation for Immigration Reform President Dan Stein. Dan, what do you make of what you heard?
Well, look, first of all, sometimes you got to spend money to save money. So whether the U.S. pays for the wall or Mexico pays for the wall, it's going to save taxpayers money because it costs us about $115 billion a year on illegal immigration. So, you know, $20 billion for the wall would be cheap. But for the first time right now, breaking news, Donald Trump used the term "if we decide to go that route," meaning if we, the U.S., decides to pay for the wall, he would find the savings in U.S. tax reform. I don't think we've heard him say that before. But Donald Trump has many, many tools in his arsenal, Neil, if he really does want to have Mexico pay for the wall.
Tell me what some of them are. Now, I've heard about, you know, visa fees, all this sort of stuff, but, you know, $8 to $14, $15 billion, it's a lot of money. How do you come up with it? If it comes to us footing the bill.
Look, a Bering whale, right? They'd swim all day with their mouths open, living on plankton, right? I mean, whether it's a $2 border crossing fee, and if you amend NAFTA, you can do that. You can talk about taxing remittances. You can add surcharge for certain kinds of transactions, import duties, clearly. You can charge more for non-immigrant visa fees from Mexico. And, of course, he has a lot of levers to force Mexico to cough up some of the money as well. I mean, he could reprogram foreign aid, but he could also actually suspend the issuance of non-immigrant visas from Mexico on a condition of them paying. He also has various national emergency powers, Neil, that enable the president, because we're dealing with the national borders and national security, to rechannel resources that could be done from the U.S. budget and then therefore try to assess it somehow from Mexico. But he has this vast toolbox, very powerful presidential powers, because it deals with international borders.
You know what's interesting, Dan, when you look at his options, and you laid out a few very, very well. The premise being, I think his premise is that the Mexicans need us a heck of a lot more than we need them, and the proof is the fact that they're going nuts over the building of this wall. Leaving that aside, do you think the two leaders will meet anytime soon? Because the Mexican president, probably pressured by polls in his country that show him losing support rapidly, it would just hurt him to come to the United States and even hint at paying for this. But where's the middle ground here? I mean, could it get really ugly between our two countries, where Americans think twice about vacationing or going to Mexico, or Mexicans to the United States, not the ones who stay here but visit here? How bad could this get?
Well, remember that there's an important element of respect in the national psyche in Mexico, but Donald Trump also understands the concept of respect on our national borders as well, and our southern border has not been respected. So we're all going to get our first lesson in watching world-class negotiating as Donald Trump is calling the Mexican government's bluff and waiting for them to actually move or pivot. And so you see, he canceled the meeting preemptively, if you will.
Right.
That's a strategic decision, because Donald Trump, if he isn't good at anything, it's negotiating. He knows how to negotiate, and he says he knows how to build. Well, he's negotiating with Mexico, and he knows how to build a wall. So if you want to learn how to get where he's going to go, you got to watch this guy in action. Eventually, the Mexican government realizes we've got like 29,000 Mexican nationals in federal prison. Mexico desperately needs remittances that come back by the billions of dollars from those here illegally every year. They have much more at stake than we do as a country for a whole range of reasons. But Trump understands intuitively the Mexican government will need to look like they achieve some kind of small victory here. And we saw Trump give a little on the question of who's going to pay preemptively and basically repivot his position in advance of, we would assume, some kind of negotiating posture.
No, it's an interesting read, Dan. I hadn't thought of that, nor did I think when the president was outlining exactly what he meant when he brought the Keystone Pipeline back on, adding a sentence or hoping to add a sentence that will say the pipe itself will be made in America. In other words, if I'm going to open this up again and renegotiate or redo this, I want that proviso in there. Always fine-tuning the deal.
Yeah. Well, remember, Donald Trump is beginning to fully explore the full range of presidential power on immigration control. Most Americans want the wall built. They're not really concerned about whether we pay or they pay, because in the end, as I said before, sometimes you got to spend a little money if you want to save money. The Americans are hemorrhaging the cost of illegal immigration. Communities cannot afford it. Various refugee admissions, which he's going to suspend, very expensive for taxpayers. Obviously, the border area has enormously benefited enormously from the cross-border economy, but the consequences have been rippling throughout the United States and communities all over. So whether it's taxpayers here or whether you skim various transactions, remittances, or import tariffs from Mexico over time, the goal is to get that money gradually over time from Mexico. As they say, just like the whale eating plankton over time, you get through small transactions, you recover the cost.
I do like the whale analogy. Dan, thank you very, very much. Good seeing you.